You have a drawer. Don't argue. Everyone has the drawer. The one that doesn't close all the way because it's full of things that do nothing. A dead concert ticket, a smooth rock from a beach whose name you've already forgotten, a single earring whose partner left this world years ago, a hotel key card that opens no door on Earth, a shell you picked up on a trip you can barely remember. None of it works. None of it is worth a single dollar. You could not sell it if you tried, and you will never, ever throw it away. And you have never once been able to explain why. That's not a you problem. That's a 200,000-year-old problem. Here's the part that should bother you a little. That exact instinct. Keeping a useless, pretty, shiny thing for a reason no spreadsheet could ever justify is not a quirk. It's not clutter. It is older than you. It is older than your grandparents. It is older than farming, older than writing, older than your entire species. There is a cave in Turkiye where two completely different kinds of creature, separated by tens of thousands of years, each reached down, picked up the exact same useless little seashell out of all the shells on the beach, and kept it, chose it, kept it close, and one of them wasn't us. By the end of this, you're going to understand why you cannot empty that drawer, and why, honestly, you were never supposed to. So before we climb down into that cave, subscribe. This channel takes one strange thing you do without thinking and follows it all the way back to why you're the way you are. New question like this one every week. Now, let's go get the shell. The cave has a name that looks harder than it is. Üçağızlı. Üçağızlı II, to be exact, tucked into a hillside on Turkey's Mediterranean coast, up in the northern corner of a region archaeologists call the Levant. If you want a mental picture, dry hills, the sea not far off, a dark mouth in the rock where, for a very long time, someone was always home. And I do mean a very long time. When researchers led by Kyoto University, Naoki Morimoto, working with a Turkish, French, and Japanese team, including a Turkish archaeologist named Ismail Baykara, dug into the floor of this cave, they weren't digging through a room. They were digging through time, layer under layer under layer, like a book where every page is a few thousand years thick. And here's the thing about a dig like this. To you or me, it would look like the most boring thing in the world. Dirt. More dirt. A slightly different color of dirt. People on their knees for years with dental picks and brushes, arguing about a centimeter. Riveting. But read those layers from the bottom up, and they tell a story that is genuinely hard to hold in your head. Down at the deepest, oldest layers, roughly 77,000 to 59,000 years ago, the cave belonged to Neanderthals. Not us. A different human species entirely. Heavy-browed, barrel-chested, stronger than you, with a brain as big as yours or bigger. Homo neanderthalensis. They lived in that cave for something like 18,000 years. Sit with that. 18,000 years is longer than all of recorded human history stacked end to end, and to them it was just home. Then, higher up in the layers, from about 59,000 to 47,000 years ago, the tenets change. Now it's Homo sapiens. Us. Anatomically modern humans, the same basic model you're running right now, moving into the exact same rooms. Now, I need you to hold one detail very carefully, because the whole story breaks if you get it wrong. They never met. Not in that cave. The Neanderthals lived there first, for tens of thousands of years, and then they were gone from it. Only later did modern humans move in. Out in the wider world, yes, the two species overlapped in time. They shared a planet for a while. But inside these particular walls, they were never roommates. This was a handoff across deep time, not a conversation. Nobody passed anybody the keys. Keep that. It matters more than it looks like it should. So, two different species, same cave, separated by thousands of years of empty rooms in between. What did the scientists actually find that made this worth a paper in 2026 in one of the most serious journals on the planet? They found that these two kinds of creature lived almost identical lives. Both hunted the same animals in the same hills. Wild goats, deer, wild boar. Both made stone tools in the same tradition, a style archaeologists call Mousterian. And here's the strange part. The tool-making didn't sharply change when one species replaced the other. The old ways just continued. Different hands, different species, even, same craft. And then there's the shell, because in every main layer of that cave, the deep Neanderthal layers and the later modern human layers, researchers kept finding the same thing, a tiny sea snail shell. A specific one with a specific name, Columbella rustica. A little dove shell, about the size of your thumbnail, that lives in the shallow water off the coast. Now, a shell in a cave sounds like nothing. People ate shellfish, right? Wrong. That's the whole point. These weren't dinner. Here's how you can tell. The Columbella rustica isn't really a food snail. There's barely anything to eat inside. And more damning than that, these shells were worked. Some had holes bored through them, so you could string them on a cord and wear them. And interestingly, that shows up especially in the middle Neanderthal layer, the deep one. Some had been polished smooth, and at least one had been heated until its color changed. Someone put it near a fire, on purpose, to make it look different, to make it look better. Nobody does that to a snack. You do not perforate your lunch. You do not polish your lunch and thread it onto a string and hang it around your neck. These little shells were carried up from the beach, worked by hand, decorated, and kept, for no reason at all except that somebody, somebody, thought they were worth keeping. They were keepsakes, ornaments. Useless, shiny, pretty things. And now, the sentence this whole video was built around. Both species did it. The Neanderthals reached down and chose that exact shell out of all the shells on that beach and carried it home and drilled it and wore it. And then, tens of thousands of years later, a completely different species, us, walked into the same cave and did the exact same thing. Same shell, same beach, same pointless, beautiful little habit. Two kinds of ancient human, one instinct. Across a gap of time so wide, it makes your family tree look like it happened this morning. That's the discovery. Two species who never met, keeping the same junk. Now here's where a good science channel has to slow down and be honest with you, because the temptation is to run way past the evidence, and I'm not going to do that. The scientists are careful here, and so am I. They are not saying the newcomers copied the Neanderthals. They are not saying anybody learned it from anybody, face to face. Remember, these two species never shared that cave. The lead author, Ismail Baykara, says it as plainly as a scientist can. We cannot yet prove direct contact. So this isn't a story about copying. It's a story about continuity, a shared way of being. Hunting the same prey, napping the same tools, keeping the same ornaments. That persisted at that one spot for more than 20,000 years. And honestly, if you go from the deepest layer to the top, closer to 30,000, straddling the entire changeover from one human species to another, the tradition survived the species. Think about what that means. The individuals died. The whole kind of human died out. And the habit, keep the shell, just kept walking. So the real question stops being, what did they find in the cave? The real question becomes, what is it about a shiny, useless object that reaches so deep into what we are that two different species, on their own, both fell for it? And to answer that, we have to leave Turkiye. Because that little shell has a much bigger story. Here's the first twist. Üçağızlı is not the only place this exact shell shows up. Travel across the entire Mediterranean, all the way to Morocco, to a cave called Bizmoune. There, modern humans were making beads out of that very same species. Columbella rustica, more than 140,000 years ago. 140,000. That's not a typo, and I spelled it out on purpose. Among the oldest personal ornaments anyone has ever found. Different continent, different people. Tens of thousands of years apart, same little dove shell, drilled and worn. And it's not just that one shell. Go to Blombos cave, on the coast of South Africa, and you'll find tiny sea snail shells, a different kind, called Nassarius, deliberately pierced and strung about 75,000 years ago. Different ocean, different species of snail, exact same behavior. Take a small shell that does nothing, put a hole in it, wear it, keep it. Do you see the pattern forming? This isn't one cave. This isn't one lucky find. Wherever you look. Turkiye, Morocco, South Africa. Across a spread of time so vast it barely fits in your imagination. Humans and human-like creatures are doing the identical, economically insane thing. Gathering useless, shiny objects and treasuring them. Which means it's not a fashion. It's not a fluke. It's a feature. It's built in. So let's ask the obvious, slightly uncomfortable question. Why? Why would evolution, which is famously ruthless about wasted effort, which kills off anything that burns energy for no payoff, let this survive for hundreds of thousands of years? Walking to the beach, hunting for one specific shell, drilling a hole in it with stone tools, heating it by a fire. That's real work. For a snail you can't eat. What's the return? And here, scientists have a genuinely good answer, though I want to flag it clearly. This is the leading explanation. the best guess from the evidence, not a fact carved in the rock. The label they use is costly signaling. Here's the idea, stripped down. Wearing or keeping something rare and useless is a message. It says, I have enough. Enough time, enough skill, enough safety, enough resources, that I can afford to spend some of it on something that does nothing. The uselessness is the point. Anyone can carry a tool that feeds them. It takes a certain kind of secure, capable, connected person to carry a thing that's purely for show, and it goes deeper than showing off. An ornament says who you're with. The particular shell you wear, the particular way it's strung, that marks your group, your people, your tribe. In a world with no writing, no flags, no names, a decorated shell around your neck could quietly announce, I belong to these ones, not those ones. It's one of the oldest identity technologies on Earth. Maybe the oldest. A way to signal across a valley without a word. You and I are the same kind. That's what that useless shell was actually doing. It was never useless. It was information. It was belonging you could hold in your hand. Now. Stay with me, because here's the part that reaches out of the cave and grabs you by the collar. If this instinct is really that deep, if it's wired in, not taught, then it shouldn't just show up in ancient bones. It should still be running inside living people right now. Inside you. And there's a study that goes looking for exactly that. Researchers ran an experiment across wildly different cultures. Scotland, Pakistan, Papua New Guinea. More than 200 parent and child pairs. Places that share almost nothing. Different languages, different religions, different everything. And they showed people plain objects and decorated objects and asked which they preferred. Here's what they found, and it's beautiful. Children. Everywhere. Across all those cultures, preferred the decorated object more strongly than the adults did. The pull toward the ornamented, the patterned, the shiny, was strongest in the youngest, before culture had much time to work on them. The researchers' reading is that this preference isn't something culture builds into us. It's something we're born with. And that certain cultures, especially modern Western minimalism with its clean white walls and its less is more, slowly teach us to tone down. The love of shiny, useless, beautiful things is the factory setting. Growing up, in a lot of the modern world, is partly learning to be embarrassed by it. Now, one careful line, because I promised you honesty. That study doesn't prove a Neanderthal felt exactly what a toddler in Scotland feels. Nobody can read a mind that's been gone for 60,000 years. What it shows is that the instinct is real, it's deep, it's cross-cultural, and it's present right now in our own species. It's an echo. But it's a very loud echo, coming from a very deep place. So let's come all the way back. Back out of the cave, back across 140,000 years, back to your drawer. The one that won't close. The dead ticket, the nameless rock, the widowed earring, the shell. You know now what you're actually looking at. That drawer is not clutter. It's not a failure to tidy up. That drawer is the exact same behavior that a Neanderthal performed by firelight tens of thousands of years ago. And that a modern human performed in the same cave tens of thousands of years after that, and that a person in Morocco performed 140,000 years ago. You are running ancient software, and it is running perfectly. Every one of those useless objects is a signal. Not to other people, this time. Mostly to yourself. The concert ticket says I was there. I am someone who was there. The rock says I was on that beach with that person, and it mattered. The shell says this moment was real, and I refuse to let it dissolve completely. You are not keeping objects. You are keeping identity. You are pinning down who you are with little physical anchors, exactly the way your ancestors. Both kinds. Pin down who they were with a drilled shell on a cord. The thing that makes an object priceless was never the object. It's the invisible story you've hung on it. And that. Attaching meaning to matter, treasuring the useless because of what it points to, might be one of the deepest, oldest, most human, and most pre-human things you will ever do. So the next time someone stands over your junk drawer and asks why on earth you keep all this pointless stuff, you can tell them, you're not a hoarder. You're the current custodian of an unbroken tradition older than your species, one that outlived the very hands that started it. You're doing what two kinds of ancient human already did in a cave in Turkiye, tens of thousands of years before anyone knew the word keepsake. You keep the useless shiny thing because keeping the useless shiny thing is one of the truest signs that you are one of us. All of us. Every kind of us there ever was. Here's what I want from you. Go find the single most useless object you own. The one thing you'd grab that a stranger would throw straight in the trash. And tell me in the comments what it is, and the story you've hung on it. That story is the whole point. I read them, and the best ones are always the ones that make no sense at all. And if the physics and the deep history hiding inside your own weird little habits is your kind of question, subscribe and stick around. Because next week, there's another one, and it's already waiting. Your ancestors kept the shell. A different species kept it before them. And right now, somewhere in your home, there's a drawer that won't quite close. And now you know it never will, because you were never really supposed to let it.